All right. What conference would you like to start with for our standings conversation?
Let's just kind of go in alphabetical order. So let's start with the AAC. I think
Okay.
our plan here is to talk Power Five, and then Mountain West and AAC as well. We're going to be highlighting kind of who's in contention and who's in the running to make the championship right now. Kind of who we think projects to be in that championship game. So yeah, let's start with the AAC. It's kind of a three-way race at this point in the season. Cincinnati obviously is leading the charge. They're 2-0 in conference play, second best team in the country. Houston has played 3 games. They're 3-0 in conference. And then SMU is ranked now 21st in the country, I believe, somewhere in there.
Yes.
And they're 2-0
Yeah,
in conference.
I'm pretty familiar with this conference. I watched this conference probably more than um, any other conference. Just because Cincinnati's in it and I care about the teams in it. Houston is looking really good after that tough loss to Texas Tech, which is not a good loss. And honestly, like I think it's interesting the dynamic and thoughts around like Power Five versus non-Power Five, because I truthfully think that if Houston would have won that game, they would have become
Oh
ranked
yeah.
by now.
Oh yeah.
Like they probably would have been ranked week 2 or 3
Yeah.
based off how they've been playing. And I think that that's just a perception of what Houston is because of the money that they have and because of them going to the Big 12. Because SMU does not get that respect. I think Houston
But
would probably even be in the top like 20 to
15.
15.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't know that they'd be in the top 15, but I think if they hadn't lost to Texas Tech, if they had that win,
Yeah.
I think that they would be ranked and would be um
In the top
in that
15 to 20 area.
yeah
Yeah.
in that range. Whereas SMU beat TCU, who I actually think is a much better team than Texas Tech and is undefeated and hasn't cracked the top 20.
That's I think what you're
Um,
saying is very very fair.
that being said, I don't. I like for being a Cincinnati fan. I don't know how I want this season to unfold. I wish that Houston and SMU played each other after Cincinnati played SMU, because then I could say, well, I want Houston to beat SMU after Cincinnati beats them, so that we can play Houston in the conference championship.
Yeah.
Because then, okay, then we're gonna
Then you
get
have
like
the lot. You beat SMU and you beat Houston. You didn't beat SMU twice.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, because Cincinnati doesn't play Houston
Yeah.
this year in the regular season, so we won't get that opportunity to play them. And I do think that they're based off of recruiting, coaching, pay, like they are the team that is most comparable to Cincinnati in the American right now, in my
Yeah.
opinion. I do think, like, I don't want to say that I'm like underestimating SMU, but I'm just looking at SMU's remaining schedule, and it's not easy.
They got the heavy. Who do they play? There's a lot of in conference. Basically, everybody that's good in the conference.
Yeah, so they have what I would consider to be the top half of the conference. The American is a little down this year, but they have Tulane, so I think they win Tulane easy. That's this Thursday, and then they get kind of a break, and they get to play Houston, so they're going to be rested playing at Houston,
That'll be a
but
big
they're
game.
at Houston. Yeah, and that's going to be a big game. Honestly, Houston could be ranked at that point. That could be like a top 25 matchup.
Yeah.
Um, but then we're gonna have then they play at Memphis, so it's like okay, wow, they're traveling to Houston, to Memphis.
Yeah.
Then they do get Central Florida at home on November 13th.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. Central Florida could be a little bit healthier by the time that they play them and could put up a fight. I think SMU wins that game. But the SMU and Houston game, or Memphis and Houston game, I don't know who wins either of those games, just because they are at the SMU doesn't draw at home.
Yeah.
Their offense looks good, but just like the American is crazy and can be crazy. SMU also has played close to some teams like Navy, who isn't very good.
Yeah.
So it's like they haven't given me everything that I need to say, yeah, they definitely win. Houston, at Houston, at Memphis, UCF, and Cincinnati. Like,
tough.
I don't know that they're undefeated. If you're asking me if they're undefeated, I'm going to say probably not.
Yeah. So I think that makes right now the call pretty easy. I don't think if we're projecting who's going to be in the AAC championship, I think obviously we both think Cincinnati will be there 99 times out of 100 at this point. I'd have to put Houston in at that second spot just because after hearing that schedule, I don't think SMU gets through that unbeaten.
It would be a coin flip for me. I have watched SMU play, and when they're playing well,
the quarterback's
they are playing
really
good.
Yeah.
So
Tanner Mordecai.
Yeah. I'll just for the fun of it, I'll say SMU is that second team in the American Conference Championship. I don't like that myself. I don't like playing teams twice in a schedule.
Fair.
In a season. I think it's so much more fun if you get new teams.
Yeah.
That's why I prefer teams with or conferences that have divisions.
I'm gonna write down our picks and we can kind of refer to it back at the end of the season. But AAC, so we both have Cincinnati in it. I have them playing Houston. Cody has them playing SMU. Anything else on the AAC? You want to move on to the AAC?
Just to I think I can really quickly run through Cincinnati's remaining schedule. There's only one team on Cincinnati's remaining schedule that has a winning season, which is also a reason that you're seeing a lot of commentators say that they don't really have a shot at the playoffs, which is it's a fair criticism, but also if they win by 50
the
points,
goalpost though. It's like they've asked them to play. They've asked them to play real what's it called? Non-conference opponents. They did that this year. They played Indiana. Indiana's not as good as they were supposed to be, but they're still a good Power 5 team. And you went on the road and you beat Notre Dame. Like I've been down on Notre Dame, but you still had to go in there and do that. That's not an easy win. That's a big time win.
They had the second longest win streak at home in the country.
Yeah.
Before that game.
Yeah.
And then Cincinnati took that spot from them.
I hate that they keep moving the goalposts like that, but I mean that is what it is. It's not really shocking. So
yeah. But yeah, that being said, that's why I also have. There's one game in there that I don't think that they should win by 50.
Yeah, it's SMU, just to clarify. Yeah. All right, moving on to the ACC. Sorry. We have the Atlantic and Coastal divisions, of course, in the ACC. In the Atlantic division, over the past 7 years, it's been nothing but Clemson out of this division. But it's looking like we might get somebody else. Or will we? Because Clemson is still sitting there at 3-1. They're really not out of the chance to make the ACC championship. Ahead of them is number 16 now, Wake Forest, who is 4-0 in the conference, 6-0 overall. And then NC State, who does have the win over Clemson, so if they would have the tiebreaker over Clemson, but they're only 2-0 in conference, 5-1 on the season. That's the Atlantic. Let me take a look at Wake Forest's schedule. They're in the driver's seat.
Yeah, so I already have it up.
Okay.
They've got Army this week, who isn't in the conference. They have Duke, North Carolina, NC State, Clemson, Boston College. They've got a tough slate.
Yeah, that
kind of in the season.
3 straight weeks going at North Carolina, home to ranked NC State, and then at Clemson. That's a tough.
And then at Boston College, who is not a pushover team.
Yes, very, very, very true. So they should be able to take care of business this next 2 weeks. They should win against Army. Army's not easy to win against, but they should theoretically beat Army, and then they should take care of Duke really, really easily. So they should be 8-0 going to that game against North Carolina, which would be a pretty big game for them. Might be one of their biggest games in a long time.
I think it'll be a huge game. I mean, that North Carolina is gonna fill out that stadium just because it's Wake Forest. Yeah. So I mean that'll definitely be interesting. I don't know. Okay. All right. Who do you have winning the Atlantic Division?
It's going to come down to that 3-game stretch where Wake Forest plays both NC State and Clemson over a three-week stretch. I think that's kind of what's going to decide it. I have this funny feeling that Clemson's going to win it after all.
Okay.
I don't fully trust Wake Forest. Love Dave Clawson. Love what they've done. I just don't fully trust them. Like if I say in my head Clemson's gonna or Wake Forest is gonna finish the season 11-1, it just doesn't feel right in my mind. Obviously, they haven't really done that before, so that's probably why. But I just don't trust them yet. NC State, they've been pretty Jekyll and Hyde. They obviously beat Clemson, but then they lost. Then they lose that game to Mississippi State on the road, which they should have won that game. So I don't fully trust them. And then, like I said, I just have a weird feeling that after all this, Clemson still only got one loss in the conference. They're 3-1. They play Wake Forest. They don't play NC State, so they'll need NC State to lose. But NC State has only played 2 conference games, so they have a lot more games.
NC State has to lose twice.
Yes.
In their remaining schedule, and I'm looking at their schedule, and I don't see they don't have anybody left on their schedule that they can't beat.
Yeah.
I honestly like.
Miami played.
Honest,
Miami played a lot better than I thought they would against North Carolina. And it's at Miami. Miami's not good. I'm not saying they shouldn't win that game, but I think that's a game they could lose. Louisville's sneaky, kind of all right. They should. I agree with you. They should win every single game except for the Wake Forest game and maybe the North Carolina game. But I don't think it's an easy schedule by any means.
So here's where I'm at, because I think Clemson is out of it. I don't think that NC State loses 2 games. So I think regardless, Clemson is not going. I mean, it takes a lot for them to lose 2 games. And I guess mathematically, NC State is the team that I should pick, but I'm not going to, because I have been an NC State fan before, and they've disappointed me. And I'm going to ride Wake Forest to at least an 11-1 season.
Okay.
And I think that that they beat NC State at home. I think it's possible that they lose to North Carolina. That's Wake Forest's loss that I could see. But I think they beat NC State at home. And
I think they beat Clemson
Wake Forest
too.
NC. Yeah, okay. I do.
All right.
I do think Wake Forest beats Clemson.
Okay.
And so I'm going with the Demon Deeks, the Fighting Dave Clawsons.
Fair enough.
Let's go.
Fair enough. You're a bolder man than
smallest stadium in the Power 5.
Yeah. Let's move on to the Coastal. Coastal isn't really too competitive right now. Pitt is 2-0, so they're full on in the driver's seat in the Coastal. And then you kind of got a log jam, a bunch of 500 teams. Virginia's 3-2. Yeah. North Carolina's 3-3. They've already played 6 conference games. Georgia Tech's 2-2. Virginia Tech's 1-1. I
think Virginia's only played 5 at this point. They're 3-2, so they've played 5.
Yeah, I said North Carolina's played 6.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
No, you're good. I don't want.
I have to take Pitt, but
I wouldn't surprise.
I mean,
you have to take Pitt, but would it surprise you if Virginia wins it? Would it surprise you if Georgia Tech wins it? Would it really surprise you if North Carolina wins it?
I really don't want Georgia Tech to win.
Virginia Tech's only played 1 or 2 games. They're 1-1, so they're still in this. So I would not.
I really don't. So I'm taking Pitt because I don't want Georgia Tech. And honestly, I feel like for some reason, if Pitt doesn't get it, Georgia Tech has to.
Yeah.
like we're repeating 2006, and we're just going to see Wake Forest and Georgia Tech playing the weirdest ACC championship game,
Yeah.
Of the second weirdest ACC championship game of all time,
Yeah.
where they won't score any points at all.
Was it 9-6 or something like that?
Yeah. And maybe now, like, it's going to be Georgia Tech and Wake Forest, and they score like a ton of points.
Maybe.
Georgia Tech. That be interesting?
This isn't. I don't know if a lot of people know this. Georgia Tech is not a triple option team anymore. They have moved on from the triple option coaches, and they have a real football coach. I don't want to say that. That's kind of mean.
Christ.
They have a coach that plays like everybody else does. They play normal football. So Georgia Tech,
a coach that's willing to recruit people. That's what they have now. They have a coach that's willing to go and try and recruit. Yeah. Rather than, oh, well, we're the second best team in Georgia, so we're just going to recruit the second best players in Georgia.
We're basically just going to be a military academy.
Yeah, and that's boring.
Yeah. So you're gonna take Pitt just kind of because you have to, right?
Yep. Mathematically, it makes the most sense at this point for me. And it looks like I'm just going, based off that in the mathematics of it. And then I'm going off a feeling with Wake Forest.
Let me look at Pitt's schedule real quick. I know they play Clemson at this week, and I think they might lose to Clemson. They don't really they play a lot of home games. They got Miami, Duke, North Carolina, Virginia, Syracuse.
I think they beat Syracuse.
They beat Syracuse. They beat Duke. They probably beat Miami. The Virginia game's going to be huge, especially if Virginia can just kind of win up to that point. And maybe if Pitt loses to Clemson and Virginia still has 2 losses, Pitt goes into that game with 1 conference loss. Virginia still has 2. That could be for the division at that point.
Yeah, that could mean Virginia takes it. I think Virginia, if Pittsburgh isn't it, is the most likely candidate.
I'm gonna pick Virginia. I like what I've seen. They have a fun team. They score a lot of points. And they have one of the best head coaching names in all of college football in Bronco Mendenhall. So gotta love that.
Great name. That is like A+ name game.
I'm taking Clemson versus Virginia in the ACC championship, resulting in, I mean, this is already kind of foreseen. I don't think they'd put Wake Forest in the playoff if it came to that. But I don't think the ACC is getting a playoff team.
I think if it came down to a 13-0 Wake Forest and a 13-0 Cincinnati, and and it's like, and there's like three teams ahead of Cincinnati.
It's like one spot.
I don't know. I feel like if there's one spot left and it's Wake Forest or Cincinnati, I kind of feel like the playoff committee being made up of literal Power 5 commissioners and athletic directors takes Wake Forest, just because there are more ACC athletic directors that benefit from that. Like, it's a selfish choice.
Yeah.
I think the only way Cincinnati gets in is if it's a absolutely obvious choice. There is nobody that you could even argue deserves, deserves not the right word, because that doesn't matter to them.
Cincinnati would still have the better win. They would have the better win because Wake Forest isn't going to play.
Yeah, but then they would say that all of
their best win.
Yeah, but then they would end up saying that all of Clemson's losses were quality losses.
Fair enough.
And so the Wake Forest
they'll just say,
loss,
well, they beat Clemson and not even pay attention to the fact that Clemson would have 4 or 5 losses at that point.
I don't know.
All right, so once again, I have Clemson, Virginia. You have Wake Forest and Pitt as our ACC picks. Moving on to the Big 12. Big 12 has 4 teams that I believe have a shot to win the conference. Oklahoma, obviously number 3 in the country, 4-0 in conference, 7-0 overall. Oklahoma State, number 8 in the country now, 3-0 in the conference, 6-0 overall. Baylor has snuck back into the rankings. They're now number 20, 3-1 in the conference, 6-1 overall. And Iowa State, 2-1 in the conference, 4-2 overall, not out of it yet. What are your thoughts here on the Big 12?
So I feel like I have to take Baylor for one of these spots.
Okay.
The reason I'm looking at the rest of their schedule, and I think that they could beat Oklahoma.
It's really the only game that they won't be favored in.
Exactly. I think Texas could be a tough game,
For three
but they've got
quarters, it'll
time
be
to
tough.
prepare for it. Yeah, I think Baylor's the better team there. I mean, Iowa State's not out of it. I guess technically Texas isn't out of it, but they are.
Texas has 2 losses now they don't have the tiebreaker.
Oklahoma.
Yeah, they don't have the
Oh yeah,
tiebreaker
they
over
don't.
both of those.
They don't have the tiebreaker. I mean, the only one that they could potentially have a tiebreaker that's ahead of the. Well, I mean, I guess Iowa State, Baylor,
Yeah.
and Oklahoma State. Well, they don't have the tiebreaker against Oklahoma State or Oklahoma.
So more than likely, it's going to be Oklahoma's probably going to go undefeated, especially if Caleb Williams continues to look the way he does. So I'm going to take an undefeated Oklahoma in the conference championship. That means that there's definitely going to be at least one loss for whoever is the other team, and more than likely it'll be 2 losses. Because Oklahoma State's good. I don't think they're top 10 in the country good. I think they'll end up losing at least definitely to Oklahoma. Potentially another game along the road. It would not surprise me if they lost to an Iowa State this coming weekend. So if I'm putting Oklahoma in and I'm picking from one of those other 3, I think I got to go Baylor as well. I've really liked what I've seen from Baylor. I think they're a good team.
So I really like what I've seen from Baylor, and like I straddle. My problem with picking games, my crutch, is I hate picking teams that I don't like.
Yeah.
Like I hate to say that like Oklahoma is going to be the team in the Big 12 championship.
I hate
because
saying it
frankly I just don't think that they deserve it. Like despite the fact that I think that they're going to probably win the majority of their games, I just don't think they deserve to win the majority of their games. Because I know that they're going to be undefeated and then they're going to get dicked by whoever they play in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I would just like to see someone else get dicked for once.
I don't get me wrong. I would love if Oklahoma lost and I was wrong, but I just don't think it's going to happen. Now that they have solid quarterback play, I just don't think it's going to happen.
You know what? I'm going to go with Oklahoma State and Baylor. I am hoping and praying that Caleb Williams has a bad game against anybody. I don't think he has a bad game against Kansas or Texas Tech. But exactly. So then, they lose at Baylor. All right. Yeah. All right. So they lose at Baylor. But then what happens if they stumble against Iowa State?
Yeah. Or they actually lose to Oklahoma State.
Exactly. So I'm going with Oklahoma State and Baylor.
All right. I'm going Oklahoma and Baylor.